I feel like I'm at a 65% better mark, if that makes sense. But what's really helping me is that the osteoarthritis that I had in all my joints, that's down like 90%. My name is Bennie Thomas Dunn. I'm 64 years old, and the way I found out about sports performance was doing research trying a physical therapist in Silicon Valley that didn't meet my needs, and I sort of stumbled on Dr. Garcia's website and did one of his webinars that answered a lot of my questions. Background, I was a U.S. Marine for close to 24 years and then got out, got a degree as a nurse, registered nurse, and practiced for 20 years. But the stem cells, to go back, I saw stem cells being used to do some tissue damage with hearts back in Jacksonville, Florida. Of course, research back then, that was in the mid 2000s. And it really sent me down this rabbit hole of studying about stem cells. And so I found out that Germany was doing a lot of research in stem cells. And then it went to Panama and looked at that clinic there. And I followed one person that really intrigued me was one of the guys that was sort of in the lab, and sort of in my mind, I thought of him as a mad scientist. But anyway, the reason I chose where I went to, which is CPI in Tijuana, Mexico, was because he had went to that facility, and the my problem is I had a bad neck, bilateral shoulders, and two bad knees, and I wanted to get a total holistic approach. And after looking as a nurse, seeing people get surgeries and stuff, there's an old adage that when you hear hoof prints outside the barn, it's probably not zebras. And that's what it means is you might see some very exotic things. And as a critical care nurse, I saw a lot of exotic things that didn't have good outcomes. So most of the time, people are okay, but sometimes it doesn't work. And I saw stem cells as the best option for me at this juncture in my life instead of going under the knife to do a recovery or whatever. And I'm so glad that I did do that. I did. I had a rotator cuff, and that was like, man, I want to say 2000. No, oh, I'm sorry. That was 1996. Rotator cuff tear repair. And then I had both my knees scoped and a couple of tumors removed, but that's not neither here nor there. Very much so. It's really funny when you look out, one develops in life. If you take the beginning of life as a baby, you sort of, if you think about it, as a baby grows up as a toddler or whatever, everything goes from inside the internal organs, and you go out to your limbs and you get your fingers and you do stuff, and kids, you put stuff in your mouth, and you're just learning everything does. But as we regress in age, unfortunately, the opposite happens. You get weaker in your extremities, and everything, and as you get older, focuses on more or less taking care of the internal organs and everything. And I've always based a lot of things for me is on grip strength, just things. I didn't want to be the biggest guy in the gym or the strongest guy. I remember I had a lot of friends did steroids and they got big as a bus, one interesting fact was one of my friends was going to some type of world games as a power lifter, and he went over to pick up his 2-year-old son, and he threw his back out, and just everything just went on a bad track. I didn't want to be that person. So now at this age in life, knowing the experience level that I had of observation, I work on things that's going to help me with my activities of daily living and enjoying, because I love to travel. I do a lot of long distance hiking, Appalachian trails and stuff like that. So it's the little things that sort of get us sidetracked as we get older. not thinking about our strength. Um, was I going to be able to do, was I going to be able to do the right type of physical therapy and the right exercises that was going to get me to where I wanted to be in the time frame? And what I mean by the time frame, I knew enough to know that stem cells take a long time, uh, relatively. What I'm saying is it takes to build the tissue up. And, I didn't get broke overnight. So my plan was I'm not going to get fixed overnight. Um, with that being said, um, the interviews I had up here was more, I mean, up here where I live at now with physical therapists, they didn't have that much of an inkling on how the progression was going to go. They said, no, we're going to put you on this program. And it was sort of regimented. And I knew that it couldn't be a regimented program. And the one thing that really sold me on you, Dr. Garcia, and you guys' clinic was there was one handout, and he showed how the progression of stem cells is dependent on the feedback that you give to um, your practitioner. And shout out to Dr. Shane, outstanding. And he's done that really well. And what I mean in that graph, it shows you where you should be at in a year and when you should be back in the gym or doing whatever you say. And as you like, they said down CPI, you're not going to be able to go play golf or long-term hike. You got to really follow the protocol. And that's very true. And so I've had a couple of flare-ups, and I told Dr. Shane, I said, well, this is what I was doing. I gave him all the feedback, and he modified the program we took a step back, but I got 4 steps forward by his modification to the program, if that makes any sense. Where I feel, now I don't know this to be fact, I'm just, in my mind, if I had went the traditional route, I would have probably said, well, no, you need to keep doing this and this. And I don't know if that would have worked. I think I would have probably been in more pain. And flare-ups flare-ups are painful if you do too many. You really got to listen to your body and follow it. And I'm not saying that like a hypochondriac, but at the same time, you got to know what the good pain from the bad pain is when you are getting stem cells and doing recovery. And I think that's what, in my opinion, I think that's where you guys probably are way ahead of other practitioners or other physical therapists around. So when I left CPI, and they were talking about the importance of physical therapy, and I also sort of versed myself in, what the recovery was going to be. And the way I came to it was when Dr. Garcia had a chart of like, this is what you can expect your body going to feel like the first month. This is what the next 2 months going to feel like. This is what the next 4 months going to feel like. This is where you should be at this point in time and doing the physical therapy where you should be time. But he also said, this is this is the way we see your physical therapy program, but at any time it can be modified because everybody don't heal the same way. Everybody's not the same way. And so we might have to make modifications. Doesn't mean it's not a cookie cutter. One size doesn't fit all. And the other thing that I liked while I chose you was it took a holistic approach. In other words, my physical therapy routine, it takes for me, all right, doing it the correct way takes about 2 hours, all right? But with that being said, it's a holistic, and what I mean by that holistic is take the shoulder joint, for example. I'm pointing to my right shoulder, but I got both. Usually when I would go in, and I'm not gonna say where, but I go in, I get the same exercise over and over again, more abductors, adductors, pulling it back in, doing this. But what Dr. Shane did, he did a whole body encompassing around the shoulder joint and lower body. He didn't, but they all affected things And I felt muscles that I hadn't felt in years. And what I'm saying is, like, one exercise I used, for example, was no more than taking the elbow up against the wall and pushing in on it as hard as you can for like 3 seconds and out. Well, by me stabilizing my body, I was feeling muscles sort of in my lower left part of the back, the abdomen on the opposite side. And so what that was telling me was that those exercises, when I'm doing this one exercise that I normally go get, I wasn't working that part. So it wasn't doing that. And he went down the chain of not only the shoulders, but like uh, getting on the foam roller and laying to get the spinal column right. And so all of those things, when I got done, I noticed, and I'm going by feedback that I had in the past, is when I do the same type of exercise, my lower back hurt. Well, I wasn't working on my lower back. And so what he gave me was a way to kill, and I use this adage, to take two birds with one stone. Does that make sense? I hope I am. But yeah, and that's what I like about it. Works for me in the way he's got my program set up. Honestly, in the way I look at it, and I'm talking about Dr. Shane again, is that the feedback that I got to give him total feedback. And I says, look, I found out this. I'll give you an example. And it's very simple. I worry about my activities of daily living, just washing yourself, getting something up. And before I had stem cells, this is crazy. I blew my knee out on the Appalachian Trail and made it over halfway on the trail, but it was something simple. It wasn't simple, but I knew my knee was getting bad. But, literally I knew when I did, it was an MCL, ACL tear. But the thing about it was at my age, they're not going to do that. At my age right now, for people looking at doing it, either you got to go somewhere that really, really has an expert at doing it, because you only got a 50-50 chance that repair is going to work, because it doesn't get the oxygen, thus the hypoxic stem cells. With that being said, I had one thing, and my knees were feeling good, everything was right. And I think this was like about 3 weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, and I'm in my 4th month recovery, by the way. So what happened was I stepped a little bit on my left and sort of tweaked, and all of a sudden I heard this like pop. It didn't do the same type of pop, but it says, oh shoot, your stability isn't good. And it felt like the knee was going to give away. So at the next session, I brought up to Dr. Shane. I says, look, this is what happened. And he says, well, I don't want you to do this, but we're going to do this. And he says, let me think about how we can get some more stability in those knees. And what really impressed me the most was, he says, after conferring with some of my colleagues, we came up with a couple of exercises that we want you to try. And he utilizing the chair, and man, it made all the difference in the world. Within that, it took me 3 weeks, but I can feel that by using those few exercises, and he didn't try to spitball something at me. He wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing the right way. And he said, well, don't go no further here. Let's do this here. So that really impressed me, that, he says, stop, don't do this. Or, you're going to feel this every time. It's your body telling you to do this. He saw the problem. Then, I'm not saying that he didn't have an answer right then, but let me think about it. Got with his colleagues. They figured out a solution and gave me the right exercise. And as far as what I can tell, it's working. Honestly, I was telling my wife last week was the last, and again, bringing up Dr. Shane, I don't mean, I'm not throwing him under the bus. He says, but look, he said, followed up, he says, with the clients that we've seen in our clinic that's had the same thing you did, he knew where I had the stem cells out, how many million stem cells I got. He says, looking back, all of those said they really didn't feel right until about the 9th month. And I can say at 4 months, I don't feel, I feel like I'm at a 65% better mark, if that makes sense. But what's really helping me is that the osteoarthritis that I had in all my joints, that's down like 90%. And so what that has happened is it's made me be able to not fight the bad pain that I always had, but enabled me to be able to work out or do the physical therapy that I needed to get done that in the past wasn't possible, if that makes sense, because I was always flaring up the arthritis. This is going to sound crazy, but I can walk up and down stairs without using the handrail. The other thing was, and this was the big concern of mine, and I bring this up, you know, they're doing a research study right now. One of the biggest key indicators of people that has longevity in life. And my deal is, I don't care about, I do want to live to be an older person, but I want to have a great quality of life. When, you know, when I can't wipe my own butt or feed myself, my time on earth has been done. That's the way I look at it. But with that being said, the research study is that people that has longevity is that you can get up off the floor not using your hands. Just something that simple. So when
okay, so one of the ways that I want to start
you guys ask me, say, what is your goal?
We're going to do this on both sides.
Be able to do, and I says, I want to be able
5-second hold
to be able to do a Turkish
and
get
I want
up
to get 20
sides.
reps on each side.
And if
And
people don't know what the exercise
like
is, you know, we got YouTube, you can find
so 5-second holds,
but it's basically laying
reps.
flat. And I've seen, as a critical care nurse, a lot of patients that died from falling and they couldn't get up and they were stuck on the floor for 2 or 3 days, and you get this horrible thing called rhabdo, which is toxins going to blood, and it causes massive organ failure. So with that being said, the one thing that I can do now is I can, now I'm not, how you put it, if I filmed it, I'd look geriatric, but I can do that now to where before the stem cells, I couldn't do that. In other words, I can get up off the floor without using my hands. I think the big thing is, in my mind, and this is the way I look at it, is the program that you offer. And this is where people get wrapped around it. They want their insurance to pay for it. But in this case, you're going to get for what you pay for. And if you go in and you get that massive amount of money and investment in the stem cells, you might as well ensure your investment that you're getting the right knowledge or the right recovery effort in your physical therapy program. And, you know, stem cells, I think a lot of people think that the stem cells, even though it's a big portion of it, it only works by how you utilize it. And what I mean by that is, if you're doing something stupid, having flare-ups all the time, you're taking those stem cells that could be doing repair, and it's working on just keeping you pain-free at that point in time of doing the flare-ups. And let's face it, in this day and time of the half-read page, there's so much technology, so many things out there that it's hard for a person in the medical field to keep up with what's going on. And what I mean by that, if you're at a place and you know you want your insurance to pay for it, that's all good. But it's all bad if that clinician doesn't know what the effects of stem cells are and how that clinician needs to take you as an individual and modify the program to get you where you're listening to your body. And it's a team effort. You got to tell your clinician the feedback that he needs, as I stated earlier, so he can, or that person can get you the right help. And this is one thing that I base financially on that. If you're out on there, for most people, especially older, what happens is, like in your financial life, it almost comes like if you drew a straight line and you made all this money and then you retire. And I retired. So what happens is you spend a lot of money, you go on trips, you do this, you buy stuff, I don't know, some stuff that a lot of people do that they want to get done to the house, the home, or whatever, or they buy a new car. I'm not into that. But what happens as you age a little bit is fine, and this is everybody, that line starts drifting down to where you level off and you get in a set economic state where you ain't spending money. Most people leave a lot more money on the table than they take with them. You don't take nothing with you. But toward the end of life, you get in worse health. All of a sudden, the cost rises up till it almost looks like the graph is an inverted bell curve, but it's a smile. It should be a frown. My thought was I'd rather spend the money up front to get the advantage out of it earlier than later. So my point being was, when I looked at this as a financial thing, along with my wife, because it affects her, is that I'd rather spend or invest in that money at the beginning so I can do those things, and hopefully when I do go down, it just flatlines out. Oh, anybody that got stem cells that any age, and everybody's at a different point in their life and they got different goals or whatever. You know, where do you want to be at? I want to go play 18 holes of golf. I want to be able to run a marathon again. I want to be able to do this. We get our neurons fixed. And there's like long-term goals that I got. I want to get back and do some more hiking. I like seeing stuff. And what I mean by hiking is I'm talking about like doing the PCT, Pacific Crest Trail. But those things is the little things. And at my point, when the sands of time runs with all of us, you really got to think about what you want and have realistic goals, because a lot of times the goals that you set, I'm not saying that they're way out of range and you go for them, but your body can only do what it can do, and it's going to tell you what it wants to do. So you need to be realistic where you want to be. That's my opinion. And you got to be able to do the work. And what I mean by do the work is physical therapy. I was telling Dr. Shane, I said, I read this about Tom Brady. Not Tom Brady either way. I take it or leave it. I mean, I'm not offending anybody. I don't know the man, never met him, probably a great guy. But the one thing that he really pointed out that really made my thing, they said, well, what made you so great? He said, the monotony of doing my physical therapy when I didn't want to do it, and, doing it the right way. And that's very true, because I find myself like when I'm doing my routine, the monotony of it is, 1001, 1002, 1003, stop, hold. But if I'm playing something or I get sidetracked or I start doing the form wrong, it ain't doing me no good. I'm just throwing my money away. And so that's the effort that you got to see. And like, I've got the luxury of this is my job now. All I'm doing is getting better. But, and I've thought about this coming in. If I was young and I've got a job and I've got family and I've got this, you really got to sit down and figure what your time management plan is going to be and when you're going to get it done. Because you can say, I'm going to get in physical therapy, but the actuality is you got to be able to do the physical therapy. And I think with the plan that y'all set out, and Dr. Shane has told me, he says, if you can't do this, just give me this. In other words, life's going to happen. That's what happened to me a couple of times. Life has happened. And that's the way I go about it. I go about like, I'm going to get this done. And that's the priority that I set. I think I covered everything. I think the one thing that I would share with everybody is educate yourself strongly. Go out and do the groundwork. In other words, before you go to your doctor, if you're going to use a physical therapist, insurance-wise, go interview that person. And a lot of medicine is going cash basis now. I know y'all use a cash base, but the thing about it is, and I do believe this with any program, but especially your program with my experience is you get for what you paid for. And I think I invested well by choosing you guys.
Hi, if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification for my weekly tips on recovering safely to create long-lasting results after stem cell therapy. Thanks, and I'll see you soon.